There's a trap that is inherent in activism and protests. And we're seeing that literally play out in the real world every day with what's happening in the United States right now as they try to stir the pot and get us all into what they would happily have be a civil war. And it's our job not to take the bait. Don't observe what is, okay? Put your attention on what you prefer it to be. Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Checho, and I am very, very excited and delighted to bring you guys this incredible podcast in which I'm going to take the source material directly from Esther Hicks, also known as Abraham Hicks, the woman who channeled The Law of Attraction, a book which I've recently reread and gone through and outlined piece by piece so I can be very specific with her teachings, his teachings, depending on who you ask, and give you guys some stuff that is directly from the source. And the way that she writes it, or the way that Abraham channels through Esther and puts it down on the page, is just exquisite. And it takes what I often try to live stream about and teach and really makes it succinct and breaks it down into parts so that it's simple to understand. So if you have a desire to understand more about gaining your greatest desires and why or why not they may be showing up in your life, or perhaps things are showing up in your life that you would rather not see, this is the podcast for you. Because this is a podcast which literally can make your dreams come true. So hang out with me, and I'm going to take you through it. I'm so excited to share this with you. So the Law of Attraction, the basic teachings of Abraham, that's the title of the book. And the book came about through Esther's husband, Jerry, who is a fascinating individual in this and really, truly a conduit for this teaching, because if it wasn't for him, Esther would have never been exposed to the material. Esther was originally exposed to some profound channeled material by Jane Roberts, and she was very, very hesitant to accept it because she was raised very religious, and so channeled material was considered, to be evil, which, there's a lot of superstition wrapped up around channeled teachings for some people of certain religions, right? So Jerry, Esther's husband, he initially began circling these kind of concepts, and when he introduces the book, he talks about some of the bigger concepts, and we're going to talk about the 3 universal laws which Abraham offers. But what Abraham is meant to do for you, right? And how did Jerry's search bring it into both him and his wife Esther's life? So what did it teach him? First and foremost, it taught him to learn to trust his own direct feelings over learned fear and hearsay, right? And Jerry insists that Abraham's material be used, not just admired, be applied to one's life. And he's passionate about that. He makes it very clear that the whole point that this book was written for is to introduce universal laws and practical processes that will bring us a natural state of well-being, right? Because Abraham knows that we want concrete answers. We want things we can use. We don't need more philosophy. We don't even need more inspiration, although I don't know if we can ever have enough of that. But we want a manual for creating a life that we can feel proud of, that we can look up and say, thank you. Thank you, God. Thank you, Source. Thank you, Universe. And so that we can feel our divine connection to a higher power, to the divine intelligence that has created life everywhere. I love that feeling. I want you all to have that feeling. And I'm going to give you a manual. And if you follow the manual, you'll have the feeling. I'm sure you've had it before, but you can really start to consciously manifest it. And my God, there's nothing more magical than that. So hang out with me. We're going to get into it. So, Jerry talked about as a young man, he chased churches, even though his parents weren't even religious. I grew up Catholic. I was in Catholic school my whole life, in church twice a week. I was an altar boy, my God. I made it out unscathed. And, I was very resistant to the teachings. I don't know if that's lucky for me or not, but Jerry also sampled many belief systems, and he also, like me, understands some of the value that each one contains. So what he speaks about is Abraham helped him to stop feeling bad about all the contradictions that he encountered when it comes to spirituality. From the beginning of that first chapter, he talks about his use with the Ouija board. Now, we live in an age where Hollywood has demonized the Ouija board, and I'm not recommending anyone go out and buy one, because most people are only going to use it with fear. And when you use it from that vibration and that frequency, what are you going to attract? Beings of that vibration. So I am not recommending Ouija board. I'm certainly not recommending you buy one and leave it laying around the house. But this was written before Hollywood got its hands on Ouija board stories, right? And so the Ouija board acted as a catalyst for Jerry, ironically enough, as it did for Jane Roberts and her husband. So there's an interesting irony and synchronicity there. So, most people get very hesitant. They hear the word Ouija board, but there's a lot of societal and pop culture conditioning with that, right? So don't pump the brakes just yet. Hear me out, all right? The Ouija board for Jerry, actually, the board, listen to this. This is funny. This is crazy. We're getting into the teachings, but this is a little history that, you wouldn't ever learn if you're just listening to someone talk about it. So the Ouija board pointed him, and it spelled out to him, read books, any and all by Albert Schweitzer. That's what the Ouija board said to him. He was like, Albert Schweitzer, that sounds familiar. So what did he do? He went to the library and he started reading books about Albert Schweitzer. I mean, like that's a crazy message to come true, or to come through. I mean, very specific, right? But what it did was it opened his mind. It opened him to the realization that there is a vast amount of intelligent communication that is available that he didn't believe was possible before that. And for the first time, the idea that one can connect to other forms of non-physical intelligence became a reality for him. And I hope it will become a reality for you if it hasn't already. So then Jerry read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. If you've ever been in sales, as I have, then you've read that book as well. And you know that it is impactful. So that book also awakened him because he used that book to help his career. So learning from Jerry. Jerry says he's always believed, and I love this philosophy, this little mantra, in judging the tree by its fruits. So everything that I consider, he said, I do from the standpoint of how I feel about it. And right there's a lot about what he said that also pertains to Seth and Jane Roberts, The Validity of the Soul, which is another book you can check out if you enjoy this kind of information, right? What feels right and what is useful. Its origin doesn't really matter. That is very true. And we get caught up in, but how does it make you feel and what is being said? And this can cut across the board with a lot of things in our life, because dogma and indoctrination is a big part of our existence on this planet right now. We are all programmed. And dogma tends to override common sense, right? It tends to act as a type of brainwashing, if you will. It says, don't think that way. Don't look that way. That's out of bounds. It limits the imagination, right? And then we blindly follow beliefs, and usually that goes against our intuition, right? We can feel it. So in this portion of the book, Jerry gets Esther to soften just enough to start to listen to some of the lessons that he learned from the Seth material, from Jane Roberts, right? And so that led to a great many things, right? But in the beginning of the book, Abraham says that there are 3 universal laws that they came to assist us with. Abraham being a non-physical entity that is truly neither male nor female, nor is it singular. They're plural. if that can make sense. They're a collective consciousness, and their sole purpose in this universe and in this existence is to bring forth these universal laws to species across the galaxy and beyond that are ready to learn them. And human beings were ready to learn them at this time. And Esther Hicks was chosen as the messenger. And she was rightfully chosen because she did a great job. So the first law is the law of attraction, right? And then the second law is the science of deliberate creation. And the third is the art of allowing. And those three components all tie into each other. And we're going to get into some of that. I mean, the law of attraction simply states that which is like itself is drawn. That which is like unto itself is drawn. That's pretty self-explanatory. Like attracts like. We all have heard that. We know that, right? And it's the most powerful law in the universe. It's the one overriding, operating law that runs this entire matrix simulation, if you will, whatever you want to call this life, right? It's cause and effect. It's at its core, it's cause and effect, and it affects everything. Nothing exists that is not affected by this law, making it true. We have a lot of laws that we talk about in this life, like the laws of gravity, which are not always laws. Sometimes the laws of gravity are defied, like that mom whose child slips under the vehicle and somehow she uses her 125-pound frame to stop the vehicle or sometimes lift it. There's been so many documented cases. What happened to the laws of gravity? What happened to physics? They were defied, right? This is a law that cannot be defied. Therefore, it is a true law, right? So the other important part of part one of this book is that, and this is echoed over and over in the teachings, we must use our own inner resonance as guidance. We ought to let our bodies and emotions show us what's aligned with us, rather than letting fear or dogma or societal conditioning and societal maxims of, well, you should be, how old are you? Why don't you have a job? What are you doing? Why aren't you married? Why don't you have any kids? All this bullshit that we're constantly hit with, that it's not necessarily for you. It's just these societal conditions. Don't let that decide what's right for you. Feel into what's right for you, right? And so the second law, the science of deliberate creation, right, is defined as this: that which I give thought to and that which I believe or expect is. All right? In short, that means you get what you're thinking about, whether you want it or not, one way or the other. So a deliberate application of this law has to become very conscious. A person has to become very conscious of what they are thinking, right? The third law is the art of allowing. And this is a key component, which is often underestimated while people try to apply this to their lives, right? The art of allowing says, I am that which I am, and I am willing to allow all others to be that which they are. Can you imagine the world if everyone believed and understood that law, that third part, right? We wouldn't have the quarrels that we have. Anyway, all these laws are very connected. So I want to get into a little bit about part two of the book, okay? Part two, we're going to get into it. But remember this. Did you ever hear birds of a feather flock together? Did you ever run into someone who you're like, my God, we have so much in common? Did you ever run into someone and find out that they were someplace you were on the other side of the world 6 years ago? And they just were like, wait a minute. I mean, this has happened to me. I was in Hawaii at a bar, and I gave the bartender my ID. Obviously, I was younger than I am now. And it's a true story. And I said, the guy looked at my ID. He was like, what's your name? Faust? I was like, yeah, Faust. And this young lady to my right, in the middle of a bar in Hawaii in January, turns to me and goes, did you say your name is Faust? And I said, yeah. She was like, oh my God. We went to theater camp in Allentown, Pennsylvania together. I was 16 and I had the biggest crush on you. I was like, what? 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 Now, what are the odds? And I had never seen her before. I would have never recognized her or known her name, but she remembered my name. And she happened to be standing next to me in a bar in Maui while I said my name. What are the odds? So, like attracts like, birds of a feather flock together. And once you understand that all people, circumstances, and events are invited into your experience by you through your thought, you will begin to live your life as you intended when you made the decision to come forth into a physical body. And that's a key sentence and component of the law of attraction, right? I want to give you a rough overview of part 2, right? So part 2 is about 3 different things. It talks about the word selfish and how confused we all are about what that word means. Because selfish is actually scared. Part 2 talks about how helping others really works. And it talks about how to measure your life by emotional alignment rather than outside validation, right? Abraham redefines selfishness as caring about your own alignment or synchronicity with source, with God, with a higher power. And you have to be selfish enough to care about how you feel, even though we're taught that in this crazy upside down world we live in, that it's selfish to put yourself first. Abraham reminds us that our feelings are an indicator of whether we are in harmony with our inner self. We can always check in with them. From a place of alignment, our attraction naturally draws in experiences that are good and uplifting, not just to ourselves, but to everyone and everything around us, right? Because when we're tuned into clarity and love, we're tuned into overall well-being. What about clarity and love could possibly be anything but wholesome and well-being, right? So instead of moralizing this idea of selfish versus selfless or unselfish, you can ask yourself at any time of the day, am I focused on what I want or what I don't want? Where are my thoughts taking me? And then you can redirect. This is harder for some people than others, but it's a practice and you can get good at it. And if you're really serious about it, you can meditate and reprogram yourself right out of those negative thoughts, which is also a practice, one that I have undertaken and continue to do every day of my life. So there's a sharp distinction that Abraham makes between focusing on someone's pain when you're trying to help them and actually uplifting them or truly helping them, right? Because we can't create through someone else's experience. We can't override their thoughts or dominant vibration. That's a fact. We can talk all we want, but most of the time, it's only going to go so far. And all of us have experienced this, right? What we can do, particularly in our spare time, is think of and imagine their success and happiness until it becomes our dominant vibration regarding them, right? We all have people who we worry about. And worrying about something, they say very wisely, is a lot like praying for that thing to come true. It's a waste of thought and energy. It only focuses on what you don't want. And as I've been explaining to you, and as many of you already know, when you do that, you're bringing that into existence, right? And that is the opposite. That's the way the law of attraction works with people who are unconscious, who don't understand their subconscious programming, right? We don't want to be that. We want to be conscious creators. That's why we're here, to experience that. That's the gift God gave us all. God, source, whatever your preferred nomenclature, right? And from that state, any action we feel inspired to take to help them, that comes from the heart. That comes from source. That's true. We begin broadcasting the vibration of their desire instead of amplifying and focusing on the negative vibration of their current reality. You would be wise to remember this when you have a sick relative, when you have someone who deals with a lot of chronic suffering and pain. This is a true way to actually help and uplift them instead of falling into it. Like I think Abraham writes, if I stare at how stuck you are, I just join you in the stuckness. And a lot of us get caught up in this. The real help is I train myself to see you as capable and supported. And then my presence becomes a doorway, not another wall. It's so well written. I'm going to repeat it. If I stare at how stuck you are, I just join you in your stuckness. The real help is I train myself to see you as capable and supported. And then my presence becomes a doorway, not another wall. That is so true. And as someone who had a brother who was very handicapped and suffered a lot from his multitude of handicaps, it's something that I tried to remember as soon as I learned this, and he made it easy because his spirit was one of, whatever was going through, if he was doing all right, everyone in the room was happy. So anyway, this brings us to negative emotions. So everybody has them, right? You can't rid yourself of all negative emotions and thoughts, right? But you got to realize that those are an indicator. They're not a failure of your ability to manifest. They're just a barometer or an indicator. They are providing guidance, and they tell us, they're the best indicator to tell us when and how our thoughts are not matching our inner perspective. And it's much easier to pivot when the thought and emotion are small, right? Then once it gets big and it collects too much energy, it becomes harder to disentangle from that. Especially, many of us, have a touch of OCD, we've got a touch of ADD, ADHD, you name it. We're all walking around with certain quirks, right? That we got from who knows where, childhood, nature versus nurture. But what I'm saying is the emotion will get stronger when you focus on it if it's negative, and that becomes harder to shift. We all know that, right? Success does not equate to not experiencing negative emotion. That would be impossible. We have them for a reason, right? It is about noticing when we feel off and honoring that feeling as the guidance toward the thought that is going to make us feel better. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. So instead of letting negative thoughts and emotions bring us down, let them be an indicator and like a little alarm bell. I'm not thinking about the right thing right now. And then you can change your thought, and that's going to change the feeling. Whatever works for you. Maybe you need to think of your beautiful little pet at home. Maybe you need to think of your gorgeous niece. Maybe you need to think of your beautiful son or your daughter or your mom, or your grandmother. Whatever takes you out of that thought and brings you back into a state of positivity is a powerful tool. So I used to make a list. I used to have a list of things that made me feel great. I used to need it. I'm not the person I was now, but I used to need a list. That's crazy, but a lot of people could use one. And so if it works for you, make a list. You can refer to it anytime you want. The longer, the better. Anything that gets you off that negative vibe and into something that is more aligned with your joy and your love is a healthy tool to have, right? So part 2 also begins to explore and talk about the reason why we're here. Enjoying perfect health, money, stimulating people, and positive non-physical connection are all valid desires. We all want to be hooked up to source. We all want to have contact. So many of us wish, like, I wish I could just, we're trying to break through. But the thing you need to remember is you're already broken through. Your connection is already there. It came with your DNA. It came with your divine essence, your soul. So it's not greedy to want these things. It doesn't make you a bad person. Whoever said money is the root of all evil is full of shit. Quite frankly, money's not the root. Money's not good or evil. Obviously, that is the craziest superstition, but that little belief can get dug in like a tick. And if you were raised with it, you may find it very hard to generate money as a source of wealth and abundance. A lot of people do, and they got to dig deep to uproot that. So, We're supposed to be seeking growth and remembering that this is what makes our journey lighter and enjoyable. We're supposed to be seeking abundance. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And there's 1,000 ways to do it. The key is to relax into wanting more while feeling good with where we are at and what we have now. So that is a very happy medium, no pun intended, right? We can't fix the world by controlling it. This is a key point that many of us need to be reminded of. We cannot fix the world by controlling it. Everyone is creating a reality through their own thoughts, feelings, and vibrations. So it does us no good to try to micromanage and control other people in the world. Our greatest gift to anyone is to maintain our own alignment and let that be the living example of what is possible. Always, I try to tell people, especially when they learn new lessons of spirituality and their mind's blown, they just want to go run and tell everyone. And I'm like, listen, people are just going to shake their head at you and give you that fluoride stare, right? Like, just embody it. Embody it and they'll be curious about it. Embody it and they'll ask about it. Embody it and you'll stop caring what other people think about you. There's liberation right there, right? So our greatest gift to anyone that we can do is to maintain our own alignment and let that be the living example of what's possible. Free will is letting others choose their experience, even if it's not the one we'd choose for them, even if we think it's a terrible idea. I'm not saying to let your, kids go run in traffic because they want to, obviously, right? I'm speaking in general for adults, and I'm referring to how to maintain a healthy inner self and relationship with others, okay? So, and that's what free will is. It's letting others choose their experience, even if it's not the one that we would choose. And while we do that, we stay tuned to our own inner self. In better words, Abraham says, my job isn't to drag you into my light. My job is to stand steadily in my light, love you, and trust that you have your own guidance too. My job isn't to drag you into the light. My job is to stand steadily in my light, love you, and trust that you have your own guidance too. There's a mantra for you. You can repeat that until it's deep into your soul and your belief system. It's incredible. Before we get into part 3, I want to share a few more words of wisdom directly from Abraham. So remember, pure desire is always accompanied by positive emotion. Perhaps that's why people fight over whether they use the word want or desire, right? They often argue that wanting implies a sort of lack and a contradiction, right? And they say, you got to be careful with that. If you want something too much, right? And there is something to that. But the problem is not with the word or the label itself, but with the state of emotion expressed while using the word. Do you understand? So it's Abraham speaks that it's their desire to help us understand that we can get to wherever we want to be from wherever we are by paying attention to our state of being, right? And that's the most important thing to understand is your mental state of being or your attitude in the moment is the basis from which you will attract more or won't. Right? And this is so powerful, right? And it's so consistent. The law of attraction is perfectly consistent. It is responding to everything in this completely vibrational universe. Remember that. It's bringing people with matching visions together. It's bringing situations with matching visions, with matching vibrations, and bringing thoughts with matching vibrations all together all the time. That's how I ended up standing next to some chick who had a crush on me when I was 18. 7 years later on the other side of the planet in the middle of January. I mean, like, it's crazy. It affects everything from rendezvous to traffic, everything. The last remnants of part 2, and then we're going to move on to part 3. Don't worry, there's only a couple parts. Okay. In order for things to change, you have to see them as you want them to be rather than continuing to observe them as you are. Let me say that again. Okay. In order for things to change, you have to see them as you want them to be, rather than continuing to observe them as you are. The majority of thoughts that people think are about things that they are observing, which means that what is becomes their dominant focus. If you're looking at the wars going on, the bloodshed on the other side of the planet in the Middle East and Ukraine, what are you doing? You're observing what is, and it is negative. It is not helpful, right? And that becomes the dominant focus of our attention and our vibration, and therefore our point of attraction. And so that's why you see the cycles of violence and protest in this world continue over and over and over, because people don't understand the law of attraction. They don't understand that by putting their attention on it. And I'm not knocking any activist. I've had many activists here in my studio recording with me. I like to amplify their voice because I do believe knowledge is power. And if people don't know something's happening, how can they begin to take measures to create something different, right? And so, but I'm saying there's a trap that is inherent in certain types of activism and protests. And we're seeing that literally play out in the real world every day with what's happening in the United States right now, as they try to stir the pot and get us all into what they would happily have be a civil war. And it's our job not to take the bait. Don't observe what is, okay? Put your attention on what you prefer it to be, right? Very powerful. With this practice, and it takes a little bit of practice, as you're looking at something, instead of allowing the observation of it to affect you vibrationally and bring you down, begin to imagine it as you prefer it to be and let that take you into a positive emotion. And with that practice, your point of attraction will change. It has to, right? And you will experience substantial change in your life. And this is how people go from sick to healthy with no medicine whatsoever, from poor to rich, from lack to abundance, from bad relationships to great ones. From bad people coming into their lives to amazing ones coming into their life. It's a shift in their vibration, in their perception, in what they're seeing when they look out into the world. And it can be replaced with clarity the more you understand this. So I wanted to, and the cool thing about it is it begins to happen with less and less effort, right? The more we can break old habits that aren't serving us and replace them with good habits that are, the happier we're going to be, the more we're going to invite abundance into our life. That is the beauty of this law, right? And it happens with less and less effort, right? Because others respond to the vibration you're putting out. And so you're creating a future that you want instead of a past that is repetitive and cyclical, like we're seeing today over and over in the news. Any news channel, turn it on. It's the exact same as it was 30 years ago. I did this. I tested it. I went back and I started watching the news from 30 years ago. You know what they were saying? Riots in the streets, gas prices exploding, war in the Middle East, this country bombing this. It's literally the exact same news. Different TV, different announcer, different broadcast system, same exact news. Why? Because people are creating from their past instead of envisioning a future they want. That's why this is so powerful. That's why this is so important to talk about and bring out again right now. Anyway, one last mantra from part 2. Okay. Abraham takes people into a creative workshop. And I just think this is important for people to hear, because Abraham talks about how important it is in choosing what matters to you, and not what others are choosing or even thinking about you, but what are you choosing for you? What brings you joy? Stop giving 2 iotas of I won't say a profane word, what other people think about you or expect of you or think you should be doing. What you do, you do you. What makes you happy? What brings you joy? All that's going to do is bring more of that into your life. To hell with society and to hell with what everyone thinks, even if that everyone is your family. It doesn't matter. In the end, it's all you. It's you. You have to look in the mirror and be happy. So what brings you joy? What makes you happy? That is yours. That's why you're here. Don't feel guilty about it. My God, pursue it as long and as far as you can. So Abraham says, I choose absolute and continuing abundance. For I understand that there is no limit to the abundance in the universe, and that by my attracting abundance to myself, I am not limiting another. A lot of us have hang-ups. We feel bad. We don't want to go out and buy that thing for ourselves because our relatives don't have that. And there's people who we know who don't, they just feel guilty. They don't want to do for themselves because they've got it in their belief system that somehow that is a slight or that is wrong to people who don't have what they have. And what are they doing when they do that? They're focusing on lack. And they're going to usher more of that into their life. So I'm just putting that out there because I know it's something that people struggle with. Not something that I struggle with anymore, but I know a lot of people who do. And what I'm saying and encouraging you is to understand that there is no limit to the resources you can manifest. Therefore, there is no reason why you shouldn't spoil yourself and everyone you love at every opportunity. Because when you know how powerful creator you are, you know there is no end to how you will be provided for as long as you believe and understand these laws. Okay, now we're really going to move into part 3. So part 3. In general, part 3 is about how the universe is quietly conspiring to line up every job that needs to get done, and how our past and our momentum in our work and in creation, there's room for everyone's victories. And when we stop thinking in scarcity, when we stop thinking in competition, which we're all entrained and conditioned to do with this nonsense Darwin put forth, and then the people who hijacked his message, which I talked about in my last podcast. You should listen to that podcast if you want to know more about that. Anyway, understand that competition is also an illusion. If you can't be happy for someone else's victories, you've got a problem, right? Don't let that tinge of jealousy keep you from your own positive emotion, because that keeps you from the alignment with your own joy, right? There's room for everyone's victories when we stop thinking in scarcity. And Abraham paints a beautiful picture where no role stays empty once there's a desire for it. And this is also echoed by the teachings of Bashar. Bashar talks about how if you have a desire to create something and you're worried that no one's going to want it, then you don't understand how the universe works. Your desire to create something comes from the fact that in the field that you're tuning into, that we're all tuning into with our minds and our bodies and this incredible technology called human DNA, we're tuning into the fact that someone does want that thing that you want to create, or you wouldn't want to create it, right? It's like Abraham says, it's like a perfectly stocked kitchen where every ingredient we could imagine is endless and abundant, waiting for whatever recipe someone wants to cook. Because if there's a task that needs to be done, there will be someone who wants to do it or doesn't mind doing it, and someone waiting to receive it. That is that's like the symbol of infinity. That's this life, right? It's very cool. Abraham says, if something honestly matters to enough hearts, the universe finds people who are a match to that work. Isn't that gorgeous? That's why you're listening to this right now. That's magic right there. Real magic. And then Abraham says, you don't have to martyr yourself to plug every gap. You understand? Meaning, when you're in alignment, you don't have to work so hard. Things come easier, right? In the non-physical realm, there's no focus on the unwanted. Do you understand? Did you ever hear of Anita Morjani speak about her time after she died, and she had a near-death experience where she was in the afterlife for a time? She talks about this. There's no focus on the unwanted. There's none of this dense feelings of guilt and shame that we deal with here in this consciousness in the physical, right? In the non-physical realm, there's no focus on the unwanted. Attention is set purely on what's desired. And the entity quickly realizes that that's exactly where his thoughts are going to take him. So here on Earth, we oftentimes, sometimes, many of us, We choose to focus on lack, on resistance, on what's wrong. And what does this do? This produces tension and suffering, and that bangs us right out of alignment. The gift of life is that it is this is the contrast that helps us to consciously refine our preferences and learn to guide our focus. So you have to be okay with that. You have to realize that that can be your best friend, because that's going to tell you when you need to redirect, right? Abraham says, up there, meaning in the non-physical, they only look at love. They only look at what they love. Down here, we can stare at what we hate too. We have so many emotions that show us when we've gone off the love channel. I love that. That's so true, right? So there is a buffer. Should come as a comfort, because when you start to learn these laws, you're like, oh shit, what have I been thinking about? Don't worry. We're just talking about how worrying is it's like praying for what you don't want. So the good news is there is a buffer between thought and physical manifestation. All of us experience it. Thank God. Now, the problem is some of us experience it so long between the thought and the manifestation that we don't correlate the fact that we've created this. And others of us get good at this, and we shorten the gap between the thought and the manifestation of that thought. And then we say, hey, I just did that. I just created that. I was just thinking about that, and that happened, right? So in that gap between thought and physical manifestation, we can notice how we feel. We can recognize off-track thoughts, and we can redirect them before they become our experience. That's the good news. When a thought is negative and it's small, it's easy to pivot, right? If we let it gather momentum, it could become a downward spiral. So the challenge is to stop. Distraction like sleep, great movie, music, meditation, anything you can do to legitimately interrupt negative spirals that have gained momentum is a tool that you cannot use enough. It is very important. So use whatever you got. Music is a phenomenal way to immediately change your vibration, especially if you're feeling down. Exercise cannot be underestimated. Exercise is a more powerful antidepressant than anything on the market 10 times over. Yet you don't hear them talking about that on the news. There's no money in it for them. And when you combine music and exercise, I mean, if I didn't have music when I exercise, I wouldn't look anything like the way I do. That's a fact. Music is it's my everything. I love it. Anyway, so that's the challenge, and take advantage of the technology that we have in a way that is beneficial. Don't doom scroll. Watch something like on Gaia or watch a podcast from Far Out with Faust. That's going to uplift you and fill you with information that's going to help your life. That's the key, right? So Abraham softens, and by reading this book, I think you'll experience it too if you haven't. Abraham does a phenomenal job. She softens worry about past experience and being realistic. Abraham points out that we can't erase the past, but we can stop feeding it our focus. And that's key. Thinking of unwanted past episodes, reruns, activates them. We all know that. If you've ever been in talk therapy, you know that you just talk about same trauma. What does it help? I don't know that it does help. It's another reason why 12-step programs have such a small success rate. What do? They focus on the problem. You have to rehash and reaffirm that identity over and over. How can you create a new one if you go to a meeting 3 times a week that affirms the old one? I'm not discouraging anyone from seeking 12-step programs. I've been in more than one. And there's a reason why we end up there, and they have a purpose and they help people. I'm just saying that is my opinion about why the success rate is low on those programs. And when I learned that, I realized that I didn't need the program. I knew how to change, and I did. So thinking of unwanted reruns that did not go well does not serve you. We have to give our attention to something else in order to shift the energy, right? So when it comes to realistic versus unrealistic events, like stuff maybe out of a horror movie that you shouldn't waste your time watching, if this time-space reality contains the resources to fulfill the desire, it's realistic. It's something you can manifest. Our job is to hold the essence of what we want and let the details be filled in. That's where the art of allowing comes in. So once again, this is a key component. Our job is to hold the essence of what we want and let the details be filled in. Because if you get hung up on the details, you're going to crush the probability and all the ways the universe can literally make what you're wishing for fall from the sky. And that has happened to more than one person I know. Things can fall from the sky. Not just like meteors and stuff from trees, but crazy things. You're like, what the? It happens, my friends. It happens. We are magic. We are magical beings. Okay. So I'm going to repeat that so you really take it in. Our job is to hold the essence of what we want and let the details be filled in. We don't have to argue with our past to do that. We just have to stop rehearsing it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I'm asking questions. I keep forgetting I'm not in a live stream. Maybe I should have done this as a live stream. Maybe I will. Let me know if you want me to in the comments, and we'll do live stream Q&A about this. It won't be the first time, but it'll be the first time using this incredible material as a source, right? So if we're specific about the means to achieve an end, and it feels good, we can go for it, right? That's where specificity comes into play. It's usually more powerful to visualize the end result, which should bring forth the feeling that you're looking for, whether it be freedom, whether it be satisfaction, whether it be joy, whether it be connection. It's always the feeling. People only want the car because of how it's going to make them feel. People only want the soulmate because of how they think it's going to make them feel. It's always about the feeling. So if you can focus and be specific about the feeling, let the universe do the rest. Let go of your expectations and sit back and enjoy the ride, because you're going to get that feeling and you're going to be like, wow, I did that. I'm a powerful creator. You're going to say that to yourself. You could even say it out loud. It's beautiful. So it's important to start with a general feel-good focus and then let the emotions stabilize around it. Instead of, like obsessing over what should I do with my life? Should I teach high school? Should I teach college? Should I go into history? What shall I major in? Maybe that's a little young for this audience, but you know what I'm saying? Instead of getting caught up in the details, look for the feeling, right? Like engaging minds and feeling appreciated. That's something you could focus on. I have this bracelet. I don't know if you can see it or not. Hold on. It's a prayer bracelet. It's an intention bead. And it came with a prayer and a mantra. And to paraphrase that mantra that I say every time I put it on is to amplify my voice and magnetize my audience with love and loyalty, and to allow me to speak from my heart with celestial wisdom. That's a summary of the intention of this bracelet. And every time I put it on, I say that. And every time I take it off, I kiss this part. This is the gratitude bead. And I feel into it. And it's powerful. It's powerful. Our intentions and thoughts are powerful. And I feel it working with me right now. And I hope you guys do too. So back to Abraham, right? So if you recall, if you remember, if you can keep in mind that we live in the most unlimited universe there is an infinite amount of trophies. Whatever place you come in, that's all part of the competitive scarcity mindset. Whomever wins is the one with the strongest desire and expectation, not the one who stole someone's opportunity. Do you understand the difference? When we stop seeing others' success as somehow taking from our own, somehow like a loss for ourselves, we free ourselves. We free our own desires to manifest. Competition serves as contrast and clarity rather than threat. So let it be that for you. Don't feel like it's wrong. Let it serve as a contrast and let it serve as a clarity rather than this thing that, we're consciously afraid that we're doing of. I hope that makes sense. Abraham puts it like this. If you think that there's only one trophy, you're going to tense up and you're going to be in fight or flight. If you really get and know that the universe has an endless way to bless you, someone else's win is only proof that that energy is flowing and will find you. And that is so true, right? Groups don't multiply mystical power. We're going to get into a different section now. The advantage of coming together is a shared focus, like the focus of this podcast and the people listening to it. It is a shared focus. And if a group is clear and aligned, the focus will amplify all good outcomes. That's why you see people who attend certain retreats and, become parts of certain, you see them start to come together and then positive things happen for them because they have a focus that's positive, right? It's very cool. So just to rehash, and I want to make sure I didn't leave anything that I feel is very relevant and applicable out of part 3, and then we're going to get into part 4, and then we're getting towards the end. Okay, just a tiny recap of part 3, and then we're going to move on to part 4. As we're thinking, speaking, we're creating. Remember that. Very hard to remember, especially every second of every day. But we can do our best to remember. As we're thinking and speaking, we are creating. Are you complaining? Are you bitching? Where are your thoughts taking you? Into more experiences you want or more experiences you don't want? There's a way and a means to control and direct them in a way that's going to bring more positivity. And then there's the way most of us do things, which is not very effective. Nobody else is creating your experience. That's the good news and the bad news. You're doing all of it. You get all the credit. You are the superstar, the writer, the director, the producer of your life, right? And as you observe your life experience and the life experience of those around you, you're going to begin to understand that there is not a shred of evidence that is contrary to these powerful laws, right? We are expressing them. And you're going to notice that there is an absolute correlation between what you're thinking and speaking and what you are getting. And when you understand that, you will have understood the law of attraction, right? And it will continue to be a source of guidance for you. One last final warning from Abraham on part 3. He says sometimes, it says sometimes we get so excited about the thing we want. We're like, oh, I want that red car, for example, right? And our vibration is perfect for the match of that thing and how we're going to feel when we're going to get it. And we're going to get something. But then we go ahead and we tell someone else and they're like, why do you want red? Why do you want a red car? Why don't you get blue? And you're like, huh? Blue? Huh? And that throws us off. So sometimes it doesn't help to share with others what your vision is, what your desire is, because they may just try to tear it down. In fact, that happens a lot. So this is just something to be mindful of. Maybe it's not worth expressing. Maybe it's worth just keeping to yourself and maintaining that vibration about that thing you want, because it's so pure and so filled with joy that it's going to work like gangbusters to manifest what you want. Don't let anyone else screw up your manifestation, right? Be very mindful of who you're sharing with and realize that they may or may not be contributing to you bringing that into your existence expediently or the long way around or never at all, right? Okay. Also in part 3, if you read the book, there are exercises to assist you in deliberate creation. I don't have time to go into them all, but they're all fantastic. They all work. And there's also a section on thoughts evoking great emotion that will help you manifest quickly. There's a section in that. The book it's not that long of a read. It's amazing to read. And it's so nuanced and very helpful. But let's get into part 4 now, okay? So in part 4, in this section, Abraham addresses 3 topics, okay? 1, bear in mind, we're the result of many lifetimes. Emotions are our guidance, not our past life memories. And lastly, Learning to allow equates to taking our power back from victim stories that we tell about ourselves and others, including our ancestors, right? Life isn't about lessons that we must learn. It's that experience which adds to a greater knowing, which makes us wiser. Let me say that again. Life isn't about lessons that we must learn. It's about experiences which adds to a greater knowing, which makes us wiser. I hope that makes sense. Death is not the end all be all. It's not a punishment. The experience of actually leaving a body adds to a greater perspective of what we are part of. We've all lived many lifetimes. Maybe some of you don't believe that, depending on your religion or philosophy. But I believe it. And every spirit, entity, every wise book about spirituality I've read speaks to it. The fact that we have reincarnated both on this planet and many others many times. But we don't remember them because our memory would be a great big confusing factor, and it would distract us from the goals that we chose from this life. People always say, well, if I have somebody pass, why don't I remember it? Well, because, all right, don't you have enough to deal with right now with this life? Imagine if you could remember and bring in all the trauma from the last, and the one before that, and the one before that. You wouldn't get through the day. I know I wouldn't. I can barely get through mine with what I do remember, and I blocked a lot out too. So there's that, right? But we've all lived many lifetimes, and we don't remember them because, in fact, they would confuse the ever-loving out of us, and they would distract us from the goals that we chose to manifest in this life. So instead of remembering past lives, we're given a connection to the wisdom that they produced, and that is accessible by all of us. Instead of remembering past lives, we all have a connection to the wisdom that they produce. That's why we live them. That's why we reincarnated again. Our past lives describe our essence as the culmination of all lifetimes, because many of you understand these lives are simultaneous. Time is linear only to the physical, right? We don't need to constantly review our 5-year-old self to function properly. We don't need to constantly have past life regressions in order to function and know ourselves. We don't need to recall them at all because we are now already, and who we are now already includes those outcomes. The wisdom is inherent in our very wise soul. Our soul knows. All we have to do is connect to it. So your soul chose this lifetime to add more knowledge to the ongoing stream. So we're not a random incident or a random accident. We're not an evolutionary fluke. We are an intentional project that has branched off from our broader self, from our oversoul, as Bashar would say. Before we came into this reality, it was agreed that we wouldn't have all the old memories to create confusion. Instead, we would get guidance from our feelings. Thought and guidance don't come from the inner self at the same time in the same form. Emotion is therefore the agreed upon language. Do you understand? Let me say that again. So thought and guidance don't come from the inner self at the same time in the same form. Emotion is therefore the agreed upon language. Your emotion, the way that you feel about something. Not how you're feeling like I'm depressed, but you're feeling about something. That is the guidance. And the more clearly, so I'm thinking about another way I can say this. So our emotion flags whether our current thoughts match our intent, right? You guys are getting that. I've been saying that in many different ways. The more clearly we set our intentions, the more precisely our inner being will shape guidance around them. The more clearly we set our intentions, the more precisely our inner guidance will shape the guidance we need around them, okay? And from this perspective, there are no victims. The more clearly we set intentions, the more precisely our inner guidance will shape around them. All right? And from this perspective, there are no victims. There are only co-creators. Everyone attracts through thought and emotion, whether they're doing it consciously or subconsciously, whether wanted or unwanted. We create a reality with attention and feeling. and we receive it when we expect it. Many fear-based creations do not manifest because the expectation isn't there. A good example, like I mentioned earlier, is horror movies. We activate these intense images, but then say or know that those scenarios won't happen to us, right? We kind of know, like we're detached from it. It's not realistic to us. And that cancels the expectation aspect. And that's why it doesn't manifest. So when you're watching something like The Walking Dead or Scream, God, I'm dating myself, or The Conjuring or a haunted movie, and you can put a nice healthy wall of detachment and understand that what you're seeing is complete BS. That is a wonderful protection for you. And you don't have to worry about then manifesting that in your life. If you watch Forensic Files every night and you're like, oh my God, then maybe change the channel. Anyway, God, that narrator on Forensic Files, he's something, isn't he? So Abraham is straightforward about the information we consume. If we keep feeding ourselves stressful and negative news, turn off the news, turn off the news, turn off the news, we add that to our vibration and reality. And as we practice attracting only what we want, we'll find ourselves drawn away from certain conversations. We won't be in the midst of those two crackheads arguing. You can tell I lived in New York City, on the subway about nothing, or screaming in general. Those things won't pop up around us. The more aligned we are in harmony with ourselves, the less we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we are being bombarded by belligerence and negativity. Remember that. And if you do find yourself there, it's just another indicator that you need to go back to work and realign. Because what you want is rainbows and sunshine, baby. Right? Rainbows and sunshine. Yeah, you know what I mean. Anyway, conversations, music, shows, our future experience pre-paves us, and it will pave the way away from negativity, right? So when you apply this to children, the child is receiving information vibrationally long before they can speak. They pick it up in the womb. They pick up their parents' fears, beliefs, and it's virtually telepathic. And that's why parenting it's really, thinking is the most information. Thinking the way a mom thinks and the way a father is thinking is going to affect that baby. And that is a hard truth that we're not taught anywhere. And that's why, my cousin just told us that she was pregnant. And I said, how do you feel? And she said, worried. I said, what? What are you worried about? You just don't start worrying from now. My God. That's what I said to her. I was like, don't do that. I didn't even need to reread this part in Abraham to tell her, don't do that. That's bad for the baby. Think happy thoughts. Just like Peter Pan. Who's seen the movie Hook? Come on, it's a classic. Robin Williams, Dustin Hoffman. Watch that movie. Watch it with your grandkids. Watch it with your children. Watch it if you haven't seen it. It's called Hook. It's a beautiful movie. Happy thoughts will make you fly. So Abraham gives us straightforward advice. If someone is swinging their arms into your face, withdraw your attention from them. And when you do, they fade out and are replaced by people who are in harmony with you. In contrast, if you focus on unfairness, you amplify that reality and attract more people of that sort. If we turn toward what pleases us, the momentum will reverse. There's an awesome 30-day practice that you can try, applicable right now, beginning tomorrow morning, beginning tonight. For the next 30 days, declare this, I quote, I expect to see, no matter who I'm with or what I'm doing, that which I want to see. That's it. I expect to see, no matter who I'm with or what I'm doing, that which I want to see. If you hold that intention day after day, the experiences in your life will shift from random to desired and intentional. It's not going to happen overnight, but what you focus on and when you focus on what you want, it's going to change everything. And what we don't want will gradually leave our reality. That is the law. This is a hard, fast rule. We're never going to get it perfectly right, my friends. We're not a static object. We're always evolving, right? We're always growing. So understanding these universal laws, they will free you from being a victim, free you from the notion that you're helpless. Nelson Mandela was in a jail cell till he dreamed himself out of it. Remember him, right? When we're in this state, Abraham describes it as an upward spiral with no backward swing. There is no negative emotion to drag us down. It's just an ongoing forward and upward movement, right? And finally, in part 4, he says, I don't know, what do you call a woman channeling a non-physical entity that doesn't have a gender? I don't know. I'm trying here. Bear with me. Allowing isn't letting people walk all over you. That's not the lesson. Allowing isn't letting people walk all over you. It's mastering your focus so well that you see and evoke what's a match to your joy, and the rest just stops being part of your movie. That's how it works. That's perfectly succinct. Part 5. In part 5, we're taught how creation is a balance between desire and belief. How segment intending, that's what Abraham calls it, segment intending. Don't get too caught up in the words. It's as simple as it sounds. That lets us pre-pave our day. Why do I meditate every day in the morning? Because it helps me pre-pave my day. Then I don't worry about going out and getting into any kind of trouble in the car or anywhere else. I'm flowing. I'm in flow. I meditate every day because I love it. I love pre-paving my day. It sets me up. I don't know how people go about their day without doing that. I know people who meditate at night. I'm just like, yeah, but how was your day? I got to do it in the morning. That's me. And that's my way of pre-paving. That's my way of segment intending, right? That's what she calls it. It lets us pre-pave our day. How can we let prosperity and help in without worshiping and being a slave to hard work? This is how. Abraham keeps coming back to a formula. Wanting isn't enough on its own. We have to allow ourselves to believe, to know. There's a balance between wanting something and expecting it and desiring it and allowing it. We desire something and we also expect to have it. That is creation at its finest, right? Because there's no contradiction in that. None. When we want something, but we activate fear around it or doubt, or we focus on unwanted outcomes, or we're like, oh God, then this could happen, then the law of attraction brings that conflict forth instead. The universe responds to the expectation, the true predominant expectation, not wishful thinking. There's a difference. Do you understand? One comes with a knowledge of feeling, a knowing, and the other comes with doubts and contradictions, right? Segments, as Abraham defines them, are clearly defined experiences like driving to work, taking a phone call. Before each one, if we were able to pause and decide how we want to feel and what outcome we'd like, we'd be lining up our vibrations so the inspired action comes true naturally. And is far more effective than any kind of scattered effort or wishful or hopeful thinking. Mentally rehearse and feel into the feelings. It is a powerful tool, my friends. Consistent practice of this makes more sensitive to emotional guidance. It makes you more awake to what you're feeling, right? It lets us evoke the best from others by expecting cooperation and usefulness instead of chaos and skullduggery. I always say this to people. Don't expect the worst. Don't expect that people are going to be rude to you. Go in with an open heart and expect them, and they will reciprocate. You'll shock them right out of the energy they were in. You'll be like a warm breath, I don't know, warm breath, but a warm gust of air on a freezing day, and you will change their day like that. And if you had walked in with the expectation that they were going to be a dick to you somehow, guess what they would have done? They would have met your expectation. So be mindful. Be mindful of them. Don't fall into this habitual trap. I know so many people who do it. Don't do it. Go be present with an open heart and watch how the world recreates itself around you. Watch how you affect people. It's amazing. So consistent practice of this will make you more sensitive to your emotion, right? So Abraham says it's like switching your day from autopilot and hope is a beggar, to tiny conscious course corrections. segment by segment. You tell life the flavor that you're interested in having, and life will bring it to you. That's the way it works, okay? Conflict only comes when someone resents the hard work that they're doing and they believe this is the only path to their success. It's the only way to generate wealth. That sets up opposing intentions. There's a contradiction in that. But if we genuinely like certain types of effort or work, there's no contradiction. Find what you love, do it. You'll get really good at it, and you'll have such a blast getting good at it that you'll attract people to you. You'll attract the customers that you were not sure you're going to get. By doing and finding what you love, you create a life of joy, and all that does is attract more abundance, more resources, more joy, more love, right? So find something you love. Be willing to risk dedicating yourself to it. Trust that the vibration it gives you will generate whatever resources you need to sustain it, even if it doesn't seem so at first. That's what this life is about. The person who wants a job but keeps obsessing about not having one is actually practicing lack, right? That pushes the job away. Once we relax and focus more on the wanted outcomes, all things like the job we desire will arrive. A good example of this is the couple who struggles to conceive, right? Usually when they give up on the idea, they decide to adopt. And what happens? Almost every time. They get pregnant then. What happened? They gave up. They gave up on the idea. They let go. The art of allowing, they let go. I'll never forget. I was coaching my kids' Little League game, and it was the bottom of the ninth. And I was sure that we were doomed. We had a 1-run lead, and they had, the bases loaded, and there was no outs. And I did not have my best pitcher on the mound. And I got riddled with anxiety. And I thought, my God, I took these kids so far. And this is it. There's no way we can get out of this. Their best hitters are up. And I literally just hung my head. I'll never forget this moment. I hung my head and I said, well, if this is it, this was worth it because we did great. I look up, first pitch, one pitch pops up to the pitcher. He's out. Next pitch pops up to the catcher. He's out. One more pitch, throws to the first base, 3 outs, no score. We won. Bases left loaded. It happened in a single minute, in an inning that felt like an eternity. And I felt it all slip away, and I let go of it. And the moment I let go of it, I couldn't believe my eyes when I looked up. I couldn't believe what was happening. That's how fast and powerful this works, right? It doesn't have to happen over time. It can happen like that. I've experienced it. I know it's true, right? So I just love sharing that. So it's a recent example of my experience with the art of allowing and how fast things change. I could not believe my eyes when I looked up and there was 3 outs and my guys were on cloud 9. It was so cool. It was so magic. So where was I? Oh yeah. So what happens? They adopt and then they get pregnant. It's like every time. So why? Because surrendering and the possibility of adopting the baby releases the resistance that they had. It softens the idea that they can't conceive. And then what happens? They get pregnant. In both cases, what changed was the vibration of expectation and relief, which opens the door, which realigns their center. It's not luck. There's no such thing as luck. It's energy being allowed to do what it was always trying to do. It's them getting out of their own way, not realizing that the actions they took allowed them to do that, right? So from Abraham's view, there is no competition in the universe at all. There is more than enough for everyone, opportunities and ideas. Competition stimulates desire. But if you mix it with the belief that there's only a few that can win, that's when we introduce fear and we shrink our own expectations. When we can remember that there are an unlimited amount of resources, unlimited amount of trophies, and we let others be successful and we're happy for them, we amplify our own possibilities. So before engaging in a tricky interaction, we can focus on what we have in common and what we would like to experience rather than engaging in a way that is negative. The expectation of people being unfocused and defensive will pull them away from that. If we expect intelligence and mutual benefit, we will evoke those qualities in the other person and the other people instead. Why aren't we teaching this to our leaders? This should be mandatory reading and learning for everybody who's in any position of leadership, parents included. I want to say that again because it's so fucking profound. There I went ahead and made this podcast rated R. Sorry. I'm Italian American and I lived in New York for like 21 years. So I get the profanity from the family and then from the city, and it's a hard habit to crack. Anyway, I'll tell you a story about that another day. So the expectation of people being unfocused and defensive will pull you away from that vibration. It will pull that situation apart, and you'll get what you expect. If we expect intelligence, if we expect mutual benefit, we will evoke those qualities instead. Prosperity is blocked not by the size of your desire, but by conflicting beliefs, such as money is the root of all evil, or money only comes through suffering, or there just isn't enough for everyone. Sorry, go scratch. That's where we get into trouble. It is our beliefs. So, my friends, in conclusion, when we understand that the laws of the universe are what they are, and the law of attraction is always at play, with no exception, and we begin to apply them, we can work less and receive more, because our vibration is going to do all the heavy lifting for us. Abraham said, it's about doing the aligned 20% that gets you 80% of the results, instead of grinding 100% against your own doubt. I'm going to say that one more time before I say goodbye to you guys. It's about doing the aligned 20% that gets you 80% of the results, instead of grinding 100% against your own doubt. Knowledge is power. When you know something in your heart, it will manifest for you. I love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this was something that you can take and listen to again and refer to, and you can make notes. You can pick up the book. Get familiar with these laws. They're going to help you in every part of your life. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast, to the channel. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, please drop us a review. If you follow us on Facebook, I notice there's like 1 or 2 reviews of our podcast on there. Everyone comes for all the content I post, but most people don't leave a review for the podcast. If you would be so kind, if you are a fan and you're on the Facebook page, if you could take a few moments and drop us a couple stars and write what you think of my podcast, I would be so grateful to you. In fact, if you do that, I'll take a note and I'm going to send you some personalized merch. How's that for the law of attraction? It would be my pleasure. If you would leave a review on our Facebook or Spotify or any, I will take note of your name and we'll reach out to you to get your address, and I will send you like a cool customizable thermos with our Far Out with Faust logo, or yoga pants, or we have all kinds of cool merch. We don't have a store up yet. It's another story. We're working on it. We'll get there. I also have a Patreon page. If you enjoy my work and the research I do and you want to support me, please join our Patreon page. There's also some really cool tiers and perks for you guys there. It's a bunch of beautiful, spiritual, freedom-loving people who get early access to all my podcasts, get the uncensored version of many of the podcasts, which YouTube wouldn't be happy if we shared with everyone. And it's a great way to stay in touch with like-minded people. With that being said, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who helped me put this together for you. God bless you. I love you guys. Take care.